God has taught us that no matter how big the tree, you water it from the roots. As I call all to hear the word of God at Exodus 20 verses 15 and 16, where it says, "Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor." Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, good will towards men. Then the Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth, and the Lord said unto me, Behold, I have put my words in thy mouth, delivering thee from the people and from the Gentiles, unto whom now I send thee, to open their eyes and turn them from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan unto God, that they may receive forgiveness of sin and inheritance among them which are sanctified by faith that is in me. Therefore, being justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. For whatsoever is born of God overcometh the world. Even this is the victory that overcometh the world, even our faith. Individual responsibility and accountability is in terms of section 140402 of the St. GP1 Delta, which says every person serving in the South African Navy, whether uniformed or civilian, is held individually responsible to maintain personnel, information, and material security in his or her area of responsibility at all times. All naval personnel are to ensure that assets under their control are properly protected against threat or loss. And it is true that the Chief of the South African Navy is responsible to the Chief of the South African National Defence Force for the safeguarding of all South African naval vessels, units, installation, material, equipment, personnel, and information. The Inspector General of the South African Navy is to monitor compliance with the execution of this policy. You will understand it to be true that the Minister of Defense, in the government notice regulating the Defense Force Service Commission, has under Section 62L of the Defense Act made the regulation in the schedule which says that whereas the Defense Force is a national asset which is mandated under the Constitution to be structured and managed as a disciplined military force and in accordance with the principles of international law governing the use of force. And the Defense Force is essential in the defense of the Constitution. You will understand it to be true that without the Defense Force, no one can defend the Constitution. For the Defense Force is the last line of defense when all organs of state fail to defend the Constitution, the territorial integrity and national sovereignty of the Republic and our democracy. And whereas the Defense Force provides a soldiering career wherein members entrust their inalienable right to life guaranteed in the Bill of Rights to the nation and the state. And whereas it is an unavoidable reality that when a soldier is recruited, he and his family becomes a part of the larger Defense Force family as an institution to share in the joys, anxieties, and sometimes unfortunate outcomes of service, including maiming and death. And whereas it is essential for an effective mechanism to be created to provide for the necessary duty of care to the soldier and his or her family, it is indeed therefore necessary to create a working environment for the soldiering professionals that is positively conducive to discipline. And whereas these factors define the uniqueness of the soldiering profession, delegation of powers and assignment of duties by the Secretary for Defense is such that the Secretary for Defense may, subject to the condition as he or she may impose, in writing delegate any power and assignment and assign any duty conferred upon him or her in terms of this Act to any employee or member contemplated in terms of Section 3. The Chief of the Defense Force, and with the consent of the Chief of the Defense Force, any member of the Defense Force. A delegation or assignment under subsection 1 does not prevent the Secretary for Defense from exercising the power in question himself or herself. It is very important that you understand these particular applicable provisions, that when you are an officer commanding, you are doing the duty for the Secretary of Defense. That duty must be performed diligently and without delay on behalf of the Secretary of Defense, the way the Secretary of Defense may perform that particular duty. For such a duty is only in accordance with the Constitution and the law. Composition of the South African National Defense Force is established by Section 224 of the 1 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, 1993, Act number 200 of 1993, continues to exist and consists of the regular force, the members of which serve full-time until reaching their age of retirement, expiry of their contract term of service, or otherwise discharged from the Defense Force in accordance with the law, and reserve force, the members of which serve on a part-time basis for such period as they have been contracted for, unless their service is terminated in accordance with the law. You may not terminate service just willy-nilly in accordance with self-will. Everything must happen in accordance with the law. The Chief of the Defense Force may, subject to such condition as he or she may impose, in writing delegate any power conferred upon him or her in terms of this Act to any member of the Defense Force, to any person employed in terms of the Public Service Act 1994, Proclamation number 103 of 1994, and serving in a post within the Defense Force, and with the approval of the Secretary for Defense, to any employee. A delegation under subsection 1 does not prevent the Chief of the Defense Force himself or herself from exercising the power in question. It is therefore necessary to understand that when you are officer commanding, training the members of the Defense Force, you act under delegation of the Chief of Defense Force. And the Chief of Defense Force expects you only to act and teach members to act and require them to act in accordance with the Constitution and the law. At Chapter 13, General Administration and Support gives the general powers of the minister, who may do or cause to be done all things which are necessary for the effective defense and protection of the Republic, its territory, and its inhabitants. Its inhabitants includes Lieutenant Commander Sylvester Walane Madala Mangolele. And without derogating from the generality of subsection 1, the minister may establish military training institution for purposes of providing training and instruction to members and employees of the department, issue directives for training of any member or employee of the department. It is therefore unnecessary to understand that without derogating from any function of the Secretary for Defense contemplated in Section 8 of the Defense Act, the Chief of the Defense Force is also responsible for the training of members of the Defense Force to act in accordance with the Constitution and the law, including customary international law and international agreements binding on the Republic. You will understand it to be true that the Chief of Defense Force succeeded to train me from Gordons Bay to be this Justice of Peace and a peace officer who is here asking God to bless Africa, saying Nkosi sikelele Africa, maluphakangiswe uphondo lwayo May her spirit, dignity, glory, or horn be lifted up high. Yizwa imithandazo yethu, hear our prayers. Nkosi, sikelela. God bless us. Tina lusapho lwayo. We, her children of Family of Africa. Let us empower the young midshipmen or candidate officers so as to have a brighter future. It is an act of parliament to rebalance and reorganize the defense force as a foundation for future growth. Morana boloka setšhaba sa heso, God protect our nation. Go fedise dintwa le matshwenyego, banish all wars and hardships, intervene and end all conflicts. O se boloke setšhaba sa heso. Protect us, protect our nation. O se setšhaba sa South Africa. Protect South Africa. South Africa, from the blue of our skies, uit die blauw van ons hemel, from the depths of our seas, uit die diepte van ons see, over our everlasting mountain, oor ons ewige geberste, where the echoing cracks resound, of waar die kranse antwoord gee, where the cliff give answer. To uphold and defend, respect the Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic and promote the unity of the nation and that which will advance the Republic on 27 September 2023 at 1000 Bravo at the South African Naval College. As I sounded that call, and united we shall stand where there is a common South African citizenship in which all citizens are equally entitled to the rights, privileges, and benefits of citizenship and equally subject to the duties and responsibilities of citizenship, in which national legislation does provide for the acquisition, loss, and restoration of citizenship. And let us live and enjoy freedom. To live and enjoy freedom is simply to fulfill the obligations imposed at Section 9.2, as I have been perpetually telling you, that equality includes the full and equal enjoyment of all rights and freedoms. And it is indeed true that everyone is equal before the law and has the right to equal protection and benefits of the law, including Lieutenant Commander Sylvester Mangolele, who is now to live and struggle, strive for freedom in South Africa, our land, is when all officers are taught to accept this environment as an environment a senior officer must live, and then lose all his property arbitrarily or without just cause, as is the case. We must enjoy this freedom. The Military Command Council and all midshipmen or all candidate officers at Section 272 of the Constitution, you are obligated to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights enshrined at Section 24 of our supreme law, in that environment is such that everyone has the right to an environment that is not harmful to their health or well-being, and to have an environment protected for the benefit of present and future generations through reasonable legislative and other measures. That is where a senior officer sleeps, antithetical to the requirements of this particular degrading state of affairs. Prevent pollution and ecological degradation, as you can see in there. To promote conservation and secure ecologically sustainable development and use of natural resources while prolonging justifiable economic and social development. In the universe, our home, I said I sound the call to come together, and united we shall stand. Let us live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home. For it is the law of the land that no one may be deprived of property except in terms of law of general application, and no law may permit arbitrary deprivation of property. property may be expropriated only in terms of law of general application, for a public purpose or in the public interest, and subject to compensation, the amount of which, the time, and the manner of payment of which have they either been agreed to by those affected or decided or approved by court. The amount of the compensation and the time and manner of payment must be just and equitable, reflecting an equitable balance between the public interest and the interest of those affected, having regard to all relevant circumstances, including the current use of the property and the history of acquisition and use of property. One must understand that the history of this property in question is such that on the 19th of August 2020, at about 13:20, unknown person knocked off at my door. This is what Lieutenant Hange says, Lieutenant Lizzie Hange. When she opened the door, the person came inside together with the female unknown to me, the child, and then called his friend, a male guy, to come inside and said, "Ke fihlile gae," in Setswana, meaning I am home. Then I asked him who he is, of which he responded that he is Mangolele. I then remembered that he is the guy who used to stay here. He then introduced the lady and his friend to me, and then I then called Commander Dulamo, my divisional officer, and she said she will come back to me. Commander Dulamo then called back and gave Commander Combrink Bopso the phone number and called me back, of which he did, and further, and he will also come up to my house, and that's there the military police arrived at my house. The military police arrived at this house to subsequently arrest me for trespassing. And in arresting me for trespassing, the matter proceeded to court, and the judge or the magistrate in the Simonstown Magistrate Court viewed what Lieutenant Lizzie Hange of the South African Navy has said as follows. Evidence for the state. The first witness to testify for the state was the complainant Lizzie Hange, who indicates that she is a lieutenant in the South African Navy. She had been granted occupancy of military house on 19 August 2020. She was at home with her brother when they heard a knock on the door. Her brother opened the door, and the accused, together with a lady and a small dog, pushed a suitcase inside the house. She did not give him permission to enter. The accused identified himself as Mangolele, and she remembered that the person who had occupied the house before her was Mangolele. She then called her commander, who informed her he called the military police. They arrived and took the accused away. Good people, these are the misconstruction that the courts have been doing on my name. The judiciary calls my daughter Aluta Songelwa a small dog, and the Chief Justice refuses to rescind or vary this particular constitutional matter. In any event I go to court, I have been prevented. That is why I come from the roots of the people that have pledged to serve and defend the country and its people in accordance with the Constitution and the law, to ensure that justice is done on the name of Lieutenant Commander Sylvester Volane Madala Mangolele, his children Nyiko Mangolele and Aluta Songelwa, who is definitely not a small dog. Integrity includes the code, morality, trust, virtue, business, reliability principles, ethics, truth, and culture. And according to Welsh, in his book, he put it in that integrity is something of a fuzzy word, so let me tell you my definition in his book called Winning. People with integrity tell the truth and they keep their word. They take responsibility for past action, admit mistakes, and fix them. They know the laws of their country, industry, and company, both in the letter and in spirit, and abide by them. They play to win with the right way by the rules. That is on that particular book, which you will freeze this particular video and see where it is on page 83. Good people. The amount of compensation and the time and manner of payment must be just and equitable, reflecting an equitable balance between the public interest and the interest of those affected, having regard to all relevant circumstances, including the market value of the property, the extent of direct state investment and subsidy in the acquisition and beneficial capital improvement of the property, and the purpose of the expropriation. For the purpose of this section, the public interest includes the nation's commitment to land reform and to reforms to bring about equitable access to all South Africans' natural resources, and property is not limited to land. The state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to foster conditions which enable citizens to gain access to land on equitable basis. A person or community whose tenure of land is legally insecure as a result of past racially discriminatory laws or practice is entitled to the extent provided by an act of parliament either to tenure which is legally secure or to comparable redress. Captain Zimasa Mabela, this is the comparable redress that you are faced with your unit. The midshipmen must not pass out that parade without adhering to these applicable laws of this land. A person or community dispossessed of property after 19 June 1913 as a result of past racially discriminatory laws or practices is entitled to the extent provided by an Act of Parliament either to restitution of that property or to equitable redress. No provision of this section may impede the state from taking legislative and other measures to achieve land, water, and related reform in order to redress the result of past racial discrimination, provided that any departure from the provision of this section is in accordance with the provisions of Section 36(1) of the Constitution. Parliament must enact the legislation referred to in subsection 6. The officer commanding of South African Naval College in Gordons Bay shall on Wednesday, the 27th day of September 2023 at 11:30 act in terms of Section 34 of the Constitution and the law at Section 101 of the Defence Act to resolve by the application of law a dispute decided in a fair public hearing for our people to live and struggle for freedom in South Africa, our land, or to live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home, before myself, the Minister, the Secretary for Defense, the Military Command Council, who shall respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights in the Bill of Rights, which is the cornerstone of democracy in South Africa and enshrines the rights of all people in our country and affirms the democratic values of human dignity, equality, and freedom. It must come to an end that a citizen of the Republic of South Africa and a senior officer in the South African National Defence Force is tortured, punished, or treated in a cruel, inhumane, or degrading way to live and struggle, strive, or attempt for freedom in South Africa, our land. It is the will of God for this to come to the roots or training of all officers in the South African Navy, holding the highest discipline of the land and the mighty sword that defends South Africa on their shoulders. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the affected and needy. It is the law of the land at section 104.10 that any person who obstructs or interferes with the defense force in the execution of its duties in terms of this act or the Constitution is guilty of an offense and liable on conviction to a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 25 years. It is also the law of the land in terms of section 104.11 of the Defense Act that any person who induces or attempts to induce any member of the defense force to neglect or to act in conflict with his or her duty to the defense force is guilty of an offense and liable on conviction to a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 5 years. The aim of this presentation is to restore constitutional order in the South African National Defense Force and the Republic of South Africa. As Chapter 2, the rights are explained as that this Bill of Rights is a cornerstone of democracy in South Africa. It enshrines the rights of all people in our country and affirms the democratic values of human dignity, equality, and freedom. The state must respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights in the Bill of Rights. Cessante regione leges, cessat ipsa lex. When the reason for a law ceases, so does the law itself. Herbert Broom's text of 1858 on legal maxim lists the phrase under the heading Rules of Logic, stating, reason is the soul of the law, and when the reason for any particular law ceases, so does the law itself. So when the state ceases to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights of Lieutenant Commander Sylvester Volane Madala Mangolele, the law at section 7.2 of the Constitution ceases. The midshipmen and generations to come shall not, with every fiber of their being, allow this law of the land to cease. And the officer commanding South African Naval College, Gordons Bay, shall ensure that this is inculcated in the training of all members of the South African National Defense Force, starting with the midshipmen on board South African Naval College. The rights in the Bill of Rights are subject to the limitation contained or referred to in section 36 or elsewhere in the bill. The limitation of rights, the rights in the Bill of Rights may only be limited in terms of law of general application to the extent that the limitation is reasonable and justifiable in an open and democratic society based on human dignity, equality, freedom, taking into account all relevant circumstances, including the nature of the right, the importance of the purpose of the limitation, the nature and the extent of the limitation, the relation between the limitation and its purpose. So when you limit my salary arbitrarily or without just cause, you are understanding that its purpose is to ensure that I am without my inalienable rights enshrined in the Bill of Rights, which are dependent on my salary. Less restrictive means to achieve the purpose. And you would understand it to be true that those who do not comply with the law of the land did not take less restrictive means to achieve the purpose that they have achieved. Except as provided for in subsection 1 or any other law, in any other provision of the Constitution, no law may limit any right entrenched in the Bill of Rights. No order from above may limit a right in the Bill of Rights. I am following an order from above. I am following an order from above. Obey the Constitution and the law. Stop obeying orders from above that are inconsistent with the Constitution. Diligent performance of obligation is such that all constitutional obligations must be performed diligently and without delay. The Minister, the Secretary for Defense, or the Chief of Defense Force may at any time or place. The time is 11:30. The place is South African Naval College in Gordons Bay. Convene a board of inquiry to inquire into any matter concerning the department. Any employee, that any employee is me. The matter concerning the department is what you are hearing in this particular presentation. We must just only follow the law, obey the law of the land, and apply it, and show the midshipmen that must carry South Africa in their shoulders to obey the law of the land. The law of the land is important than any other person or any other thing. Despite subsection 1, a chief of service or division may at any time is 11:30 on the 27th day of September 2023 at Gordons Bay, and place is Gordons Bay, South African Naval College, convene a board of inquiry to inquire into any matter that service or division, as the case may be, or any member or employee or any public property, the property or affairs of any institution or any regimental or sports fund of the said service or division, and to report or to make recommendations thereon. You will just only have to obey the law of the land when I come to the South African Naval College. Let us not be in a position where we ignore the law of the land and allow false evidence to appear real, while the reality is that we serve and defend the country and its people in accordance with the Constitution and this law that you are seeing right now on your screen. It is not a lie that a chief of a service or division may, subject to such condition as he or she may impose, in writing delegate any power conferred upon him or her in terms of subsection 2 to any member or employee in his or her service or division, as the case may be. Officer commanding South African Naval College, your delegation confers you to do this particular law and fulfill these particular obligations. All that you and I will do in peace is to ensure that the law of the land is obeyed by all people. I am not asking you to send me to jail for simply coming to you with the law of the land. I am not saying call the minister, they must come here, and if they are busy, the meeting will not happen. No, the meeting will happen as it is envisaged by God and the law of our land. Disciplinary and other military offenses are such that in this schedule, any word or exemption to which a meaning has been assigned in this act has the meaning so assigned, and unless the context otherwise indicates, calculated includes likely. Desert in relation to any person who is subject to this act includes, without in any way limiting its ordinary meaning, being absent without authority from that person's unit or formation while on service with the intention of avoiding service. Missing any form of transport by which that person has been warned to travel with the intention of either not accompanying his or her unit or formation on service or not proceedings on service. Form of transport. Officer commanding of Gordons Bay, I request transport. Send the duty driver to Kaelicha and let that duty driver call me on 084-835-9161 to come and collect me, such that I can meet our meeting at 10 o'clock and our subsequent meeting at 11:30. You will understand it to be true that the terms that are in here are true and correct and are the terms of the law. I am a senior officer who does not have money for transport to come to Gordons Bay. I have dragged myself from Mohogelo to Kaelicha to be here and be closer to Gordons Bay. As a result, I have made your job fairly easy to fairly just dispatch a vehicle to come and collect me in accordance with the Constitution and the law. Failing to report for any service under the Defence Act within 7 days after having been called upon for such service. In this regard, I'm not asking you to desert your duty to fail within 7 days. Please, we do not have 7 days, for all constitutional obligations must be performed diligently and without delay. Officer Commanding of South African Naval College. Any person who is subject to this act, who deserts from the defense force, is guilty of an offense and liable on conviction if he or she committed the offense while on service to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 20 years, and in any other case to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 10 years. That is in terms of Section 13 of the Military Discipline Code. I did not desert my duty. I have acted improperly and with reasonable cause. Mutiny includes a collective insubordination. I am acting on my own without any hey, viva, toi toi, or anything of that sort, for I am prohibited from toi toiing in accordance with Section 104 of the Defence Act. In relation to the conduct of an officer includes any military or social behavior which is so unbecoming as to ordinarily warrant the termination of such officer's service. That is scandalous behavior. And unbecoming includes inappropriate, improper, or disgraceful. I trust that it is not disgraceful to give you the Constitution and the law. It is, in fact, becoming of any officer to approach their superiors in accordance with the Constitution and the law. For the purpose of this, Item 42 and concept higher authority, other authority, appropriate higher authority and duty, the following applies. In the duty, it is the duty of every person who is subject to this act, who is aggrieved by any act or any action or any omission of any other person who is subject to this act, and who wishes to have his or her complaint addressed by a higher authority, to direct this his or her complaint in writing to his or her officer commanding or commanding officer. You are the officer commanding the words honor, dignity, courage, integrity, loyalty, and pride, including discipline, as the officer commanding South African Naval College. All officers have brushed those words, and I come to those particular words in sort of all that I have lost as a result of an act or omission of any other person who is subject to the Defence Act or the Code of Military Discipline. It is our heritage, and the Military Command Council, our heritage as naval officers and all other commissioned officers, is honor, dignity, discipline, courage, integrity, loyalty, and pride. And the officer commanding these terms at South African Naval College in Gordons Bay is Captain Zimasa Mabela, who in terms of Section 1996 of the Constitution and the law at Section 2E of the Defence Act may not obey a manifestly illegal order, as also pledged in the Code of Conduct for uniform members of the South African National Defence Force. It is the truth that you may not obey a manifestly illegal order to say, send Mangolele to jail. Do not allow Mangolele to enter SA Naval Unit. Do not obey a manifestly illegal order. When you deal with me, all you have to do is simply obey the supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law. Commissioned officers in the Defense Force are actually in terms of Section 54 of the Defense Act. And subject to subsection 2, the President may confer a permanent commission to any member of the Defense Force. A member upon whom a commission has been conferred must be issued with a deed of commission bearing the President's signature or a replica thereof. In order to qualify for a permanent commissioned appointment in the Defense Force, a person, including all midshipmen that are on training right now, must swear or declare allegiance to the Republic, be a citizen of the Republic, relinquish any other citizenship he or she may have served successfully on probation as an officer with a temporary commission for at least 1 year. That's why right now during your training you are midshipmen, and successfully complete the specific prescribed training that you are currently engaged on, and never have been convicted and imprisoned without the option of a fine for a criminal offense, except one for which he or she has been granted amnesty in terms of the Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation Act. Be fit and proper person to serve and must have a trustworthy and exemplary character and comply with the prescribed security grading requirements. An exemplary character is to allow me to come and talk to you into your unit and address this matter of national importance for generations to come. People must know from you as the officer commanding of South African Naval College whether they must live and struggle for freedom or they must live and enjoy freedom. The 27th of September ends all these things when we come out of Gordons Bay, after you have been trustworthy to all people and lead with exemplary character. You must understand that in our shoulders is such that only the President may cancel a permanent commission, but such a commission may not be cancelled without the holder thereof being notified in writing of any complaint or charge made against him or her of any action proposed to be taken in respect thereof, nor without him or her being called upon to show cause in relation thereto. So your rank cannot be cancelled by you disobeying a manifestly illegal order. And when a person calls you to say, I want to cancel your rank because you allowed Mangolele to enter into our heritage as officers, you must understand it to be true that that person is a devil, that person is a liar, that person is Satan, that person is in the darkness, and must come out of the darkness and unto the light, and must come out from the power of Satan and unto God. Where the holder of a permanent commission cannot be traced after a diligent search, such search that is appropriate in the circumstances, the commission may be cancelled without such notification. You may not cancel my commission without notifying me. You may not cancel my commission without calling me to show cause. You may not employ hearsay evidence that Lieutenant Commander Sylvester Volane Madala Mangolele is Mr. Sylvester Volane Madala Mangolele. You may not obey a manifestly illegal order. That is the truth, Captain Zimasa Mabela. I am Lieutenant Commander Mangolele, and I am standing in Gordons Bay in this particular picture that you see, the unit you now command. We ran together in 2003, and we did things together to achieve that which is on our shoulders. For us to stand proud and tell all people that I have worked hard for what is on my shoulders. Understand it to be true that I also have worked hard for that which is on my shoulders. And on my shoulders is South Africa. That needs to be understood, that no member of any security service may obey a manifestly illegal order. That is the establishment, structuring, and conduct of security service. That security service of the Republic consists of a single defense force, a single police service, and any intelligence service established in terms of the Constitution. The defense force is the only lawful military force in the Republic. Other than the security services established in terms of the Constitution, armed organizations or services may be established only in terms of national legislation. The security service must act and must teach and require their members to act in accordance with the Constitution and the law, including customary international law and international agreements binding on the Republic. Captain Zimasa Mabela, this applicable section applies to everything that you teach the midshipmen. This is policy that needs to be applied diligently and without delay. You cannot teach the midshipmen not to act. You cannot require the midshipmen not to act. And the midshipmen may not be in the position where they do not act in accordance with the Constitution and the law. For you will be breaking our establishment, structuring, and conduct as a security service. It is true that neither the security service nor any of their members may, in the performance of their functions, prejudice a political party interest that is legitimate in terms of the Constitution, or further, in any partisan manner, any interest of a political party. You may not say that you are a member of ANC, therefore ANC does not like this one, or you are a member of DA or member of anything and this one does not like that one. You have no business in the political parties. You only do that which the Constitution and the law obligates you to do. To give effect to the principles of transparency and accountability, multi-party parliamentary committee must have oversight of all security services in a manner determined by national legislation or the rules and orders of parliament. It is the truth that we must abide by as members of the South African National Defence Force. We have a duty to our country and its people. And South Africa is indeed on our shoulders. What is on our shoulders is one sovereign democratic state founded on the following values of human dignity, the achievement of equality, and the advancement of human rights and freedoms. In a position where you find that human rights and freedoms are not advanced, such is an illegal order. In a position where you hear that Lieutenant Commander Mangolele must live without payment of his salary and must continue to ask people for money, such is an illegal order. For you are violating the first fundamental value that defines that which is on your shoulders, human dignity. It is indignity for you as a captain to be going around asking midshipmen 20 rand or 100 bucks so that you can buy bread to eat. Let us fix this, Captain Zimasa Mabela. We have the power, we have the knowledge, we have the ability, we have the mandate. It is indeed in our shoulders that the other value that enshrines this is non-racialism and non-sexism. Supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law, a universal adult suffrage, a national common voters roll, regular elections, and a multi-party system of democratic government to ensure accountability, responsiveness, and openness. That is what is on your shoulders. Ensure accountability, responsiveness, and openness. Don't send me to jail for wanting to care for my children and serve and defend my country and its people in accordance with the Constitution and the law. Because the Constitution is the supreme law of the Republic. Law or conduct inconsistent with it is invalid, and the obligations imposed by it must be fulfilled. There is indeed one common citizenship, as I have alluded, and such a citizenship is in terms of Section 3 of the Constitution. We must uphold the law. We must defend and respect the law. I have mastered the discipline of the naval sword as a peace officer, and the people that are working in the judiciary have failed to uphold the law. It is the truth that the minister and any organ of state defined in Section 239 of the Constitution, as well as all members of the Defense Force and any auxiliary service and employees, must, in exercising any power or performing any duty in terms of this Act, have regard of the following principles. The formulation and execution of defense policy is subject to the authority of Parliament and the National Executive. The primary object of the Defense Force is to defend and protect the Republic, its people, and its territorial integrity. The Defense Force must perform its functions in accordance with the Constitution and international law regulating the use of force. You don't have a choice, but you must perform your functions in accordance with the Constitution and the law. The Defense Force must have a primary defensive orientation and posture. Your primary orientation and posture is to defend everything that is written in the Constitution and the law. If the Constitution says everybody must turn right, that is where everybody must go. If the Constitution says everybody must turn left, that is where everybody must go. And again, no member of the Defense Force may obey a manifestly illegal order. Neither the Defense Force nor its members may, in the performance of their functions, prejudice a political party interest that is legitimate in terms of the Constitution, or in partisan fashion further any interest of a political party. The Defense Force must respect the fundamental rights and dignity of its members and of all persons. In performing your duties, you must respect my fundamental rights and dignity. You do not have any other choice. And please, I say to you, I have worked hard to deliver this presentation to you with this absolute diligence, because I believe in the supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law. I believe in the training of the midshipmen, and I believe in their ability to apply the law of the land for generations to come. I am a man of God coming to the heritage of all naval officers, which is honor, dignity, courage, discipline, integrity, loyalty, and pride, to rebalance and reorganize the Defense Force as a foundation for future growth by calling upon the state, the Military Command Council, and all midshipmen or all candidate officers under training in 2023 to enforce the rights of a citizen of South Africa born on 24 January 1983, named Sylvester Volane Madala Mangolele, and a volunteer in the South African National Defense Force with force number 99004046, holding a permanent commission to a rank of lieutenant commander, which only a person upholding, defending, and respecting the Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic, and promoting the unity of the nation and that which will advance the Republic, may cancel in terms of Section 54.3a of the Defense Act. I have traveled from Mohogelo to Cape Town with the grace of God to make this constitutional reality become true at Gordons Bay on 27 September 2023, or as soon thereafter as the parties may be heard, for the following fundamental human right: healthcare, food, water, social security, in which the Constitution enshrines that everyone has a right to have access to health care services, including reproductive health care, sufficient food and water, and everyone has a right to have access to social security, including, if they are unable to support themselves and their dependents, appropriate social assistance. I am unable to support myself and my dependents, and I require appropriate social assistance from you, the officer commanding Naval Gordons Bay, and all the midshipmen on board. The state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization of each of these rights. It is true that the state must respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights in the Bill of Rights. This right must be respected, protected, promoted, and fulfilled by the officer commanding in all midshipmen in Gordons Bay. No one may be refused emergency medical treatment. And it is indeed true that freedom and security of the person is such that is enshrined in that everyone has the right to freedom and security of the person, which includes the right not to be deprived of freedom arbitrarily or without just cause, not to be deprived, to be detained without trial, to be free from all forms of violence from either public or private sources, not to be tortured in any way, and not to be treated or punished in a cruel, inhumane, or degrading way. The Bill of Rights applies to all law and binds the legislature, the executive, the judiciary, and all organs of state. It is indeed true that no exceptional circumstances whatsoever, including but not limited to a state of war, threat of war, internal political instability, national security, or any state of emergency may be invoked as a justification of torture. Excuse me. Despite any other law to the contrary, including customary international law, the fact that an accused person is or was a head of the state or government, a member of a government or parliament, an elected representative or a government official, or was under a legal obligation to obey a manifestly unlawful order of a government superior, is neither a defense to a charge of committing an offense referred to in this section, nor a ground for any possible reduction of sentence once that person has been convicted of such an offense. And no one shall be punished for disobeying an order to commit torture. For the purposes of this presentation and this act, the act is the Combating and Preventing of Torture of Persons Act of 2013, Act number 13, if I'm not wrong, of 2013. For the purpose of this act, torture means any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for such purposes, so as to obtain information or confession from him or her or any other person. Torture means any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for such purposes as to punish him or her for an act he or she or any other person has committed, is suspected of having committed, or is planning to commit. I want you to understand this particular meaning of torture. Torture is not like you see in the movies, a person being held in the chair, screaming or something. Torture in law is exactly that. Like when you want to punish a person for an act that is committed by other person. People committed an act on my name and you are punishing me for what people have done. I did not stop my salary. I did not at all. People did it and I am being punished for that. So that must stop. And you must understand that to obey a manifestly illegal order in law from any government superior, that is not an excuse for an offense of torture. It doesn't matter whether that person is or was the head of the state. You cannot commit torture. It is the law of the land that torture must not be committed and cannot be committed. So let us understand it to be true that torture means any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for such purposes, so as to intimidate, or coerce him or her or any other person to do or to refrain from doing anything, or for any reason based on discrimination of any kind, when such pain or suffering is inflicted by or at the instigation of or with the consent or acquisition of a public official or other person acting in an official capacity, but does not include pain or suffering arising only from inherent in or incidental to lawful sanctions. It is an offense of penalty to commit torture, and any person who attempts to commit torture or incites, instigates, commands, or procures any person to commit torture is guilty of an offense of torture and is on conviction liable to imprisonment, including imprisonment for life. And any person who participates in torture or who conspires with a public official to aid or procure the commission of or commit torture is guilty of an offense of torture and is on conviction liable to imprisonment, including imprisonment for life. You will understand it to be true that when you continue to torture me, you will have to go to jail for life. Don't go to work, go to jail for life. Or all people that are in jail must come out of jail. Or subsequently, we stop calling oneself the defense force. For the defense force protects this law. When this law says any person who commits torture, any person who attempts to commit torture, any person who incites, instigates, commands, or procures any person to commit torture, or any person who participates in torture, or who conspires with a public official to aid or procure the commission of or to commit torture, is guilty of an offense of torture and is on conviction liable to imprisonment, including imprisonment for life. That is the law of the land that we must uphold, defend, respect, and protect. It is indeed true that everyone has the right to bodily and physical and psychological integrity, which includes the right to make decisions concerning reproductions, to security and control over their body, and not to be subjected to medical or scientific experiments without their informed consent. You will have noticed that one has been in a mental institution for mental observation without consent. And all that has been because I am uttering the words of the Constitution and the law. You would understand it to be true that the people who have sent me for mental observation and published it on the national media, on newspaper, to say that a former naval officer has been sent for psychological mental observation due to nonsensical demands. This Constitution and the law is seen as a nonsensical demand by a court, by a judicial officer, by a judge who is being paid a salary. And I am not being paid a salary for upholding, defending, and respecting the Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic, and promoting the unity of the Republic and that which will advance the Republic to live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home. Instead, I'm sent to jail, such that you can live and continue to attempt, struggle, or try hard, or go all out for freedom in South Africa, our land. That must come to an end. And as we bring it to an end, you must understand the duty of the Defence Force. Captain Zimasa Mabela, as well as all members of the Defence Force, has a duty in terms of milestone 2 of the South African Defence Review 2015 to rebalance and reorganize the Defence Force as a foundation for future growth. And the midshipmen under her command may not be taught the wrong by Mr. Marcel de Wet as right. Captain Zimasa Mabela, the Defence Force must be structured and managed as a disciplined military force. That is what Section 200 obligates. And in the law, Section 64 of the Defence Act dictates that all members who are under instruction and training at any defence training institution in the Republic are subject to the code. For the purposes of subsection 1 and for the purposes of jurisdiction, prosecution and punishment, a member of another force must be regarded as holding the equivalent of a rank in the defense force as determined by the chief of the defense force. So my rank of a lieutenant commander in South Africa is equivalent to a rank of a lieutenant commander in America, in anywhere in the world. You must understand it to be true that your rank also as a captain is equivalent to the rank of a captain anywhere in the world. Misconduct of commissioned officers is in terms of section 020915 at chapter 2 of St. GP1 Delta, where it says the misconduct of commissioned officers is to be treated in terms of the Defense Act, MDC, common law, and or other applicable statutes. We have a reality in which there is a signal that came out on the 28th of July 2020. It is the signal that caused me to be in number 4 Cable Hill Road, Simonstown at 19 August 2020 to ensure that I do not get to be absent from duty for more than 30 days. And the reality of this signal, it shows you the proclamation or promulgation from the court of the military judge. This is the only disciplinary hearing that I have been to in the defense force. This is the only disciplinary hearing that has come out and concluded in a signal that I read to you that I have received. And the chief of the South African Navy refuses to comply with this particular signal. There was a DD1 given. Like all other disciplinary actions, a DD1 must be given, which is an account of offense. DD means defense document 1. You cannot be disciplining a person saying, hey, Mangolele is not allowed entry here, but there is no DD1 to that effect. And I ask that you follow this DD1 and its applicable terms, which was signed on 13 February 2017 by Captain Fore, who quickly got promoted and retired as a rear admiral in a space of 3 years after he has signed this. Everybody that has done wrong to me got promoted like nobody else's business. The account of an offense was such that it had an annexure A, which charge 1 was section 14B MDC, charge 2 was section 14B MDC, charge 3 was section 14B MDC. And the witnesses are, as you can see there, who have then indeed attended. Charge 4 was section 30A of MDC, false statement in official document, and charge 5 was section 4B MDC, which is talking about all those relative accounts. And in all those accounts, as you can read, there is no offensive behavior. And you would find that in terms of the record of proceedings of court on 17 October 2017, this is DD 27. I was found not guilty for all. This particular thing, where one is not allowed entry, happened arbitrarily or without just cause. It happened in front of the principles of Batupele, which were violated grossly, and which I ask you now to promote as the officer commanding South African Naval College. It is indeed true that it was placed that Lieutenant Commander is not allowed to have access to any SA Navy units or facilities. And this is a manifestly illegal order that you must not obey, that I am asking you not to obey. If you are to obey it, please sit down with me and show me Mangolele, Captain Chalinchali was with you when this DD1 was given to you, and this is what you said during your defense for this particular reality, and all those particular things. Do not just brush me off by saying that you are obeying an order from above that is without due cause. Because all that the above is doing is to waste your time, is to waste the future generations' time, is to waste our children's time, is to waste everybody's time for us to continue and living and struggling for freedom in South Africa, our land. They make false evidence appear real. Now you believe the false evidence appearing real that I was issued with the DD1, for which I was found guilty not to have access to any military unit. This must come to an end. Mr. Marcel de Wet, on the 8th of August 2018, have authorized a stoppage of payment of my salary in terms of Section 105 of the Defence Act. And that particular reality I was not found guilty for in any court of law. For any guilty verdict that is there must also be reviewed by higher authority. It is all true that on the 15th of February 2019, the court found me not guilty for the charges, all 5 charges that were brought against me. And for some odd reason, people think that I am guilty for whatever reason, or I am also guilty for not supposed to, for entering the military units. I am guilty, I am guilty, I am guilty. People are taught that to a point where that there must have been a parade that tells you that I am not guilty. That parade was not held. The only thing that was promoted was that I am guilty. I am guilty. I must not be seen. I must not enter. And this worst promotion went to even a judge in the court of law who said the plaintiff was a member of the armed forces in the Republic. He held the rank of lieutenant major. Good people, there is no rank of lieutenant major in the armed forces. This civilian judge is losing his mind and is so in the dark to lead the territorial integrity into disrepute for all people to believe that there's a lieutenant major in terms of Section 1655 of the Constitution. Section 1655 mandates that an order or decision issued by a court bind all persons or organs of state to which or whom it applies to. So now, you as the midshipmen, you are supposed to believe this civilian judge over a lieutenant commander who tells you that I am a lieutenant commander, not a lieutenant major. People are writing things and then are making law that is inconsistent with reality in my name. He further says, in the fleet, lieutenant major in the fleet command of the South African Navy. That is a pure lie. Stationed in Simonstown. He was charged with 5 offenses relating to what was seen as offensive behavior. There is no charge of offensive behavior there. There's no Section 105 that you can see there of offensive behavior. And as you can see, this person is trying to make sure that whatever that Mr. Marcel de Wet has written on the DOD PESAL system merits his judgment. To try and convince everybody I am a judge. Everybody believes a judge. Everybody must not believe anything. They must just believe a judge. I'm a judge. I'm saying that this person is a lieutenant major. I'm not a lieutenant major. I don't obey a manifestly illegal order. I did not obey that particular order. I've been forced to obey this manifestly illegal order. All of you are being forced to obey this manifestly illegal order that there's a lieutenant major in the defense force. There is no lieutenant major in the defense force, in any defense force. You will understand it to be true that he said 4 of which related to his failure to appear at his place of duty and 1 to both failure to appear and making a false entry on the day register. It is these events arising out of these developments and their consequence in his life which, in my view, appear to have an adverse effect on the plaintiff. How can it adversely affect you not to be found guilty? not to be found not guilty. They say to be found not guilty, it means, hey, I'm adversely affected. It's like everything is wrong. Everything, including offensive behavior, which you do not see there. And when you want to discuss this with the judiciary, the Chief Justice does what? He runs away. He deserts his duty. And he causes the defense force to act in conflict with its mandate. You need to understand the reality of this particular matter. You need to understand the severity of this particular matter. You need to understand the depth at which it cuts across in terms of betrayal to the Constitution. It is true that the primary object of the defense force is to defend and protect the Republic, its territorial integrity, and its people in accordance with the Constitution and the principles of international law regulating the use of force. Territorial integrity is for people outside in the international world not to believe that we have a lieutenant major in our armed forces. That's territorial integrity. Because people that are referring to these judgments that wants to take other people to mental institutions, they will be looking for a lieutenant major in the South African Navy, and there is no such. Political responsibility such that a member of cabinet must be responsible for the defense. Only the president, as head of the national executive, may authorize the employment of the defense force in cooperation with the police service. And I want you to understand that when the police come to you and arrest you, you don't quarrel with the police. You quarrel with the person who sent them. You will understand that each and every time I have been arrested, it has been the police in cooperation with the defense force. And I have found it to be true that it is only the president-in-law who can do that. So you will understand it to be true that I have been sent to jail by the president all the time, when we discipline ourselves to the applicable terms of Section 2012A of the Constitution, which explicitly sets out and tells any person that it is only the president who may authorize the employment of the defense force in cooperation with the police service. So I want you to understand this particular reality such that it's only the president who may authorize the employment of the defense force in defense of the Republic. I am in defense of the Republic. It is South Africa behind me. It is South Africa on my shoulders. And it is only the president, as head of the national executive, who may authorize the employment of the defense force in fulfillment of an international obligation. And it is understood that officers, warrant officers, and ratings of the South African navies are not to institute or take part in any meetings, demonstrations, or processions for party or political purposes. Under no circumstances whatsoever are they to attend such meetings whenever held in uniform. They may attend public political meetings in plain clothes, but this and the registration of their vote represent the full extent of their political activities. Such is written in terms of Section 020914 at Chapter 2 of the CNGP1 Delta. You must understand it to be true that we do not do politics in the defense force. We defend the Constitution and the law. And when the law tells you that it is only the president, that is the law. And when the law tells you that it is only the president that have sent me, that is the law. So let us be in a position where we understand the law of the land and its applicable nature and where we stand with it. Captain Zimasa Mabela, you are employed by the president. in terms of Section 201 of the Constitution. It is the truth I am employed by the President in terms of Section 201 of the Constitution. It is the truth that the midshipmen are employed by the President in terms of Section 201 of the Constitution. Let us not run away from the fact that the person who has employed us is the President. And the President is the person who must uphold, defend, and respect the Constitution as the supreme law and promote the unity of the nation and that which will advance the Republic, as obligated in terms of Section 83 of the Constitution. It is true that employment of the Defense Force, in addition to the employment of the Defense Force by the President as contemplated in terms of Section 201(2) of the Constitution, the President or the Minister may authorize the employment of the Defense Force for the service inside the Republic or any international waters in order to preserve life, health, or property in emergency or humanitarian relief operations, ensure the provision of essential services, support any department of state, including support of purposes of socio-economic upliftment and effective national border control. The powers and duties referred to in subsection 1 may only be exercised or performed for the purposes of successful execution of that employment, prevention of crime, maintenance of law and order, or preservation of internal security of the Republic. It is indeed my first goal to defend and protect South Africa. It is my first task to deter and prevent conflict. It is my second task to protect national interest. It is my third task to defend South Africa. It is my second goal to safeguard South Africa. It is my fourth task to safeguard borders. It is my fifth task to safeguard critical infrastructure. It is my sixth task to cooperation with the police service. It is my seventh task to ensure information security. It is my third goal to promote strategic influence, as I am doing now, through generations to come. It is my ninth task to contribute to peace and stability, as it is my third goal to promote peace and security. It is my fourth goal to developmental and other ordered tasks, which includes executing relevant treaty obligations, ordered presidential tasks, assist civilian authorities as ordered, contribute to the development of South Africa and its people, for them to live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home. It is my duties and it is my goals, and those are equally your duties and your goals, Captain Zimasa Mabel. Because public administration must be governed by the democratic values and principles enshrined in the Constitution, including the principle that a high standard of professional ethics must be promoted and maintained. A principle that efficient, economic, and effective use of resources must be promoted. A public administration must be development-orientated. Services must be provided impartially, fairly, equitably, and without bias. This is where I ask you to understand and fulfill these public administrative functions. Understand that I have employed this video to summarize everything to you. Understand that I have employed this video to explain the context and the applicable and obligations imposed by the Constitution and the law. And understand that it is indeed true that people's needs must be responded to, and the public must be encouraged to participate in policy making. It is policy making for you and myself to teach our children to tell God in national prayer to let them live and enjoy freedom. Not to tell God in national prayer to let them live and struggle for freedom. That is why public administration must be accountable. To be accountable, We call upon all the people who want our children and their children's children to live and struggle for freedom to come and account. Transparency must be fostered by providing the public with timely, accessible, and accurate information. This tells you that you may air the proceedings that yourself and myself can have, or we may record them and give them to the public to know that what had happened during the meeting of the officer commanding of Gordons Bay and Lieutenant Commander Sylvester Bolane Mangolele on 27 September 2023. Public administration must be governed by democratic values and principles enshrined in the Constitution, including the principle that good human resource management and career development practices to maximize human potential must be cultivated. Public administration must be broadly representative of the South African people, with employment and personnel management practices based on ability, objectivity, fairness, and the need to redress the imbalances of the past to achieve broad representation. You are indeed obligated to do these things for the sake of the midshipmen, to lead them by examples, ensure that good human resource principles are cultivated, ensure that public administration is done in accordance with Chapter 10 and Section 195 of the Constitution, as the officer commanding of the words honor, dignity, courage, discipline, integrity, loyalty, and pride. It is indeed true that the above principles apply to administration in every sphere of government. They apply to organs of state and public enterprises. National legislation must ensure the promotion of the values and principles listed in this. The captain is responsible for maintaining his or her command and everything appertaining thereto in a state of readiness at all times for any duty he or she may be required to perform. You don't believe me? Look at section 020205 in chapter 2 of St. GP 1 Delta. The whole Holy Spirit has come down for Africa to be saved, as we constitute, knowing that all people that are in jail broke the law of the land. The first citizen will go to jail, or all people in jail must be released with immediate effect. As of paramount importance, Satan, I command you with the power vested unto me by God to take your hands off my children, their children, and my finances for generations to come. It is only with God and the light that my salary will be paid, and it is only with Satan and darkness that my salary will not be paid. A child's best interests are of paramount importance in every matter concerning the child. It is indeed true that every child has a right to a name, a nationality, and to a name and a nationality from birth. Every child has a right to family care or parental care, or to appropriate alternative care when removed from the family environment. Every child, has the right to basic nutrition, shelter, basic health care services, and social services. Every child has a right to be protected from maltreatment, neglect, abuse, or degradation. So when you cause me to neglect my children, you are breaking the law. When you cause my salary not to be paid to ensure that the order from above is upheld, the manifestly illegal order from above is upheld, you are breaking the law. You must understand that to be true, that this is the law of the land, that every child has a right to be protected from maltreatment, neglect, abuse, or degradation. To give effect to certain rights of a child as contained in the Constitution, to set out principles relating to the care and protection of the children, to define parental responsibilities and rights, to make further provisions regarding children's courts, to provide for the issuing of contribution orders. The Children's Act gives provisions for the applicable terms that the rights which a child has in terms of this act supplements the right which a child has in terms of the Bill of Rights. And all organs of state in any sphere of government and all officials, employees, and representatives of an organ of state must respect, protect, and promote the rights of children contained in the Children's Act. A provision of this act binds both natural or juristic persons to the extent that it is applicable, taking into account the nature of the right and the nature of any duty imposed by the right. Captain Zimasa Mabela, my children requires your service and defense in accordance with Section 28 of the Constitution and Section 8 of the Children's Act. I ask you diligently to perform all constitutional obligations, and my children will come home to their father. I will be able to buy my children clothing. I will be able to buy my children food. I will be able to take my children out. I will be able to parent my children as you parent your children, as a citizen equally entitled to the rights, privileges, and benefits of citizenship. The best interest of the children are of paramount importance. In all matters concerning the care, protection, and well-being of a child, the standard that the child's best interest is of paramount importance must be applied. To provide for the strengthening of measures to prevent and combat corruption and corrupt activities, to provide for the offense of corrupt and offenses relating to corrupt activities, to provide for investigative measures in respect of corruption and related corrupt activities, to provide for the establishment and enterprises conflicted in them. The preamble is that whereas the Constitution enshrines the right of all people in the Republic and affirms the democratic values of human dignity and equality and freedom, and whereas the Constitution places a duty on the state to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill all the rights as enshrined in the Bill of Rights, and whereas corruption and related corrupt activities undermine the said rights, endanger the stability and security of society, undermine the institution and values of democracy and ethical values and morality, jeopardizes sustainable development, the rule of law and credibility of government, and provide for a breeding ground for organized crime. You will understand it to be true that you have a duty to report corrupt transactions. For in terms of Section 34 of this Act, any person who holds a position of authority and who knows or ought reasonably to have known or suspected that any other person has committed an offense under Part 1, 2, 3, or 4, or Section 20 or 21, insofar as it relates to the aforementioned offenses of Chapter 2, or the offenses of theft, fraud, extortion, forgery, or artillery of forged document, involving an amount of more than 100,000 or more, must report such knowledge or suspicion or cause such knowledge or suspicion to be reported to any police official. Subject to the provision of subsection 37(2), any person who fails to comply with subsection 1 is guilty of an offense. Upon receipt of a report referred to in subsection 1, the police official concerned must take down the report in the manner directed by the National Commissioner and forthwith provide the person who made the report with an acknowledgement of receipt of such report. You will understand it to be true that the police officials are incompetent or have been incompetent for the past 5 years to deal with this corrupt activity relating to payment of my salary. For my salary is indeed more than the value of 100,000 rands. For the purposes of this Act, Captain Zimasa Mabela, as a person, you are regarded as having knowledge of a fact if you are a person having actual knowledge of this fact. Or the court is satisfied that the person believes that there is a reasonable possibility of the existence of that fact, or the person has failed to obtain information to confirm the existence of that fact, and knowing shall be construed accordingly. For the purposes of this act, the person ought reasonably to have known or suspected a fact if the conclusion that he or she ought to have reached there are those which would have been reached by a reasonably diligent and vigilant person having both the general knowledge, skill, training, and experience that may reasonably be expected of a person in his or her position, and the general knowledge, skill, training, and experience that he or she in fact has. As a reference in this act to accept or agree or offer to accept any gratification includes demand, ask or seek, request, solicit, receive or obtain, agree to demand, ask for, seek, request, solicit, receive or obtain, or offer to demand or ask for, seek, request, solicit, receive or obtain any gratification. A reference in this act to give or agree or offer to give any gratification includes promise, lend, grant, confer, or procure. The person has failed to obtain information to confirm the existence of that fact. Agree to lend, confer, or procure, or offer to lend, grant, confer, or procure such gratification. As reference in this act to any act includes an omission, and acting shall be construed accordingly. Agreed to demand, ask for, seek, request, solicit, receive, or obtain, or a reference in this act to any person includes a person in the private sector. An arrest by a peace officer is in terms of Section 40 of the Criminal Procedure Act. And as much as the peace officer, you are a peace officer as well as the officer commanding Gordons Bay. You, Naval College, Gordons Bay. You are a peace officer as a midshipman training at South African Naval College, Gordons Bay. And to bring this particular matter forth to you is such that a peace officer a peace officer may without warrant arrest any person who commits or attempts to commit any offense in his presence. Good people, I am telling you that the incumbent president is committing an offense in my presence. It is the truth of this particular presentation, it is the truth of my life, it is the truth of everybody else, that I see the incumbent President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa as Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Force committing an offense in my presence such that the Defense Force is unable to act in accordance with the Constitution and the law, and the Defense Force has been unable to respect my rights and dignity as a person. And who willfully obstructs him in the execution of his duties? It is the truth that the first citizen has been consistently, through any other means or ways, willfully obstructed me in the execution of my duty to the Defense Force in accordance with the Constitution and the law. And this does not only take me as a member or a volunteer in the South African National Defense Force. This also happens to me as a citizen of the Republic. And a citizen or any private person may without warrant arrest any person who commits or attempts to commit in his presence, or whom he reasonably suspects of having committed of an offense referred to in Schedule 1. You will understand that the offense referred to in Schedule 1 is desertion of duty, and deserting your duty, it sends you to imprisonment for life, for 20 years. And to torture me sends you to imprisonment for life. So it is indeed true that as a citizen, I am also arresting a decline in critical capabilities through immediate directed interventions in terms of section 42 of the Criminal Procedure Act. And as a person who he reasonably believes to have committed any offense and to be escaping from and to be freshly pursued by a person whom such private person reasonably believes to have authority to arrest that person for that offense, whom he is by any law authorized to arrest without warrant in respect of any offense specified in that law. The law of torture gives me that right. Whom he sees engaged in an affray. Any private person who may without warrant arrest any person under subsection 1A may forthwith pursue that person, and any private person to whom the purpose of the pursuit has been made known may join and assist therein. The owner, lawful occupier, or person in charge of property, or in respect of which any person is found committing any offense, and any person authorized thereto by such owner, occupier, or person in charge may without warrant arrest the person so found. You must understand it to be true that it is the president who took the car keys of my vehicle. Functions of the Secretary of Defense is that as head of the department, as contemplated in the Public Service Act 1994, Proclamation number 103 of 1994, and the accounting officer of the department as contemplated in Section 36 of the Public Finance Management Act. And I want to tell you that the object of the Public Finance Management Act is to secure transparency first, accountability and sound management of the revenue, expenditure, assets and liabilities of the institution to which this act applies. And at Section 36, an accounting, every department and every constitutional institution must have an accounting officer. Subject to subsection 3, the head of the department must be the accounting officer of the department, and the chief executive officer of a constitutional institution must be the accounting officer for that department. The relevant treasury may, in exceptional circumstances, approve instructions. Those are what you find in the Public Finance Management Act. The Secretary for Defense is the principal departmental advisor to the Minister on Defense policy and matters, and most importantly is responsible for the discipline of administrative control over management of employees, including their effective utilization and training, and must monitor compliance with policies, direction issued by the Minister to the Chief of the Defense and report thereon to the Minister. Those are the functions of the Secretary of Defense. The functions of the Chief of the Defense Force are in terms of Section 14 of the Defense Act, and summarily include the responsibility for the training of members of the Defense Force to act in accordance with the Constitution and the law, including customary international law and international agreements binding on the Republic, and is responsible for the employment of the Defense Force in accordance with the authorization in terms of Section 2012 of the Constitution and Section 18(1) of this Act. And you must understand it to be true that he must manage the Defense Force as a disciplined military force, and is responsible for the development of a non-racial, non-sexist, and non-discriminatory institutional culture within the Defense Force in accordance with the Constitution and departmental policies on equality, opportunity, and affirmative action. It is true that the Chief of Defense Force has mandated you to fulfill these particular functions and responsibilities. You are doing that on his behalf as the officer commanding training the midshipmen. So if the Chief of Defense Force says he's not there to come and attend on Wednesday, the 27th of September 2023, you must understand that you are delegated automatically to represent the Chief of Defense Force as such. And the Chief of Defense Force may not ask you to act outside the context of the Constitution and its supremacy. It is the truth of what I am telling you. It is the truth of what I am asking you. God has helped 99004046 MC Lieutenant Commander Sylvester Volane Madala Mangolele with his power to take over command of the Republic of South Africa, which is one sovereign democratic state founded on the following values: human dignity, the achievement of equality and the advancement of human rights and freedoms, non-racialism and non-sexism, supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law, universal adult suffrage and national common voters' role, regular elections and a multi-party system of democratic government to ensure accountability, responsiveness, and effectiveness. What do you do, Mangolele? You will all remember this is one Sub-Lieutenant Musikinya during our training in 2003 telling you that what do you do when you see a situation like this? And his response is that you must take charge. And taking charge after seeing the Malaminse is what I am doing. Because it is indeed true and the law of the land that the president is the head of the state, the head of the national executive, and must uphold, defend, and respect the Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic and promote the unity of the nation and that which will advance the Republic. The president may not act out of this conflict, in conflict with his mandate. If the president says, hey, don't listen to Mangolele and don't follow the Constitution and the law, then the president or the incumbent president thereof is not doing what the Constitution and its supremacy mandates. Interpretation on the Bill of Rights is such that when interpreting the Bill of Rights, a court, tribunal, or forum, and let me bring you to this thing of court, tribunal, or forum. When you are sitting with me, or when you are sitting in any meeting, you are a forum. And that forum must obey the Constitution and the law. The court is also the last state organ that we must go to as a forum or a tribunal. For the court is only subject to the Constitution and the law, which it must apply impartially and without fear, favor, or prejudice. So when you are in a meeting, holding, discussing, Mangolele must not enter, Mangolele must not enter, Mangolele must not enter, that's the forum that is seen as interpreted in terms of Section 39. So let me explain to you how this thing comes together. Access to court is defined as everyone has the right to have any dispute that can be resolved by the application of law decided in a fair public hearing before a court, or, where appropriate, as it is the case now, another independent and impartial tribunal or forum. So don't be in a position where you are thinking that access to court, its definition, it only means go to the court in the judiciary. We can have the court in a meeting, we can have the court in a board of inquiry, we can have the court anywhere else where we gather in accordance with the Constitution and the law. This access to court is further defined in the Superior Courts Act at Section 9, where it says all superior courts must be open to the public every business day and may perform their functions of the court on any Saturday, Sunday, or public holiday as may be required from time to time. You will understand that I have been to court on Saturdays at night every time, because the courts are independent and subject only to the Constitution and the law, which they must apply impartially and without fear, favor, or prejudice as obligated in terms of Section 1652 of the Constitution. We must promote the values that underline an open and democratic society based on human dignity, equality, and freedoms. So if you are in a position where you are promoting a society that underline a reality that a lieutenant commander must go around asking people for money to eat, you know that you are not interpreting the Bill of Rights in accordance with the applicable terms of Section 39 therein. It is important to understand that you must consider international law and may consider foreign law. And when interpreting any legislation, and when developing the common law or customary law, every court, tribunal, or forum must promote the spirit, purport, and the objects of the Bill of Rights. That is what must happen when you are interpreting any legislation, when you are interpreting any policy. As a forum or a tribunal, you must promote the spirit, the purport, and the objects in the Bill of Rights. For it is true that the Bill of Rights does not deny the existence of any other right or freedoms that are recognized or conferred by common law, customary law, or legislation to the extent that they are inconsistent with the bill. Compliance of the law is such that the judges have failed to comply with the law of the land at all times, and also in relation to extrajudicial conduct, they have failed to comply with the law of the land as per their code of conduct at Article 6. And you must know it to be true that now you inherit that particular seat as a judge, where personally you must avoid or disassociate yourself from comments or conduct by persons subject to his or her control that are racist, sexist, or otherwise manifest the discrimination in violation of the equality guaranteed by the Constitution. In court and in chambers, act courteously and respect the dignity of others. In conducting judicial proceedings, give special attention to the right to equality before the law and the right of equal protection and benefit of the law. And in the performance of judicial duties, refrain from being biased or prejudiced. So you will find that all these things that the judge must do were not done in the name of Lieutenant Commander Sylvester Olane Madala Mangolele. It is right that I do this in service and defense of my country and its people in accordance with the Constitution and the law, and with honor, dignity, courage, and integrity, to remove the incumbent President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa on the grounds of a serious violation of the Constitution or the law, serious misconduct, or inability to perform the functions of office. Mr. Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa may not receive any benefits of the office of the President and may not serve in any public office. With the powers of the Code of Conduct for uniformed members of the South African National Defence Force, in the presence of everyone hearing my voice, and in the full realization of the high calling I assume as President of the Republic of South Africa, swear or affirm that I will be faithful to the Republic of South Africa and will obey, observe, uphold, and maintain the Constitution and all other law of the Republic. And I solemnly and sincerely promise that I will always promote all that will advance the Republic and oppose all that may harm it, protect and promote the rights of all South Africans, discharge my duties with all my strength and talents to the best of my knowledge and ability, and true to the dictates of my conscience. It is true that I will do justice to all and devote myself to the well-being of the Republic, and so help me God. My first act in terms of Section 4 of the Constitution to determine the national anthem by proclamation for all to live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home, as I command all to stop asking God in national prayer to live and struggle, strive or attempt for freedom in South Africa, our land. All those who are against me want you to pray to God to let you live and struggle, strive or attempt for freedom in South Africa, our land. which is law or conduct that is inconsistent with the supreme law of the Constitution. Is the law of conduct which is inconsistent with the supremacy of the Constitution and the law. Equality, as you have seen, mandates that the state may not unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against anyone on one or more grounds, including race, gender, sex, pregnancy, material status, ethnic, social origin, color, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, conscious belief, culture, language, and birth. No person may unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against anyone on one or more grounds in terms of subsection 3. National legislation must be enacted to prevent or prohibit unfair discrimination. Discrimination on one or more ground of the grounds listed in subsection 3 is unfair unless it is established that that discrimination is fair. Organizing African unity is such that every individual shall have the duty to respect and consider his fellow being without discrimination, and to maintain relations aimed at promoting, safeguarding, and reinforcing mutual respect and tolerance. The individual shall also have the duty to preserve the harmonious development of the family and to work for the cohesion and respect of the family, to respect his parents at all times, to maintain them in the case of need, as obligated in Article 29 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. To serve his national community by placing his physical and intellectual abilities at its service. Good people, my intellectual abilities have been placed in this service, and the reality is such that one has done everything not to compromise the security of the state whose national or resident he is. And I have done everything to preserve and strengthen social and national solidarity, particularly when national solidarity is threatened. Every individual has a duty to preserve and strengthen the national independence and the territorial integrity of his country, and to contribute to the defense in accordance with the law, to work to the best of his ability and competence, and to pay taxes imposed by law in the interest of the society. It is indeed true that I must pay taxes, and to define me as a person who is without salary, while the reality is I must have salary, is unlawful. Let us do things right. Let us do things the way every individual has a duty to preserve and strengthen positive African cultural values in his relations with other members of the society, in the spirit of tolerance, dialogue, and consultation, and in general to contribute to the promotion of the moral well-being of society. To contribute to the best of his abilities at all times and at all levels to the promotion and achievement of African unity. That is also your duty as the officer commanding Naval College at Gordons Bay. At all times, at all levels, you must promote African unity. I, 99004046, Lieutenant Commander Sylvester Volane Madala, command Mr. Marcel Divet at Human Resource Separation to remove the false entry he made on DoD Personal System on 8 August 2018 so that my salary could be paid into my bank account. This is the action that you have taken. And when one looks at the offensive behavior at section 105, it spells out that one needed to be convicted. And conviction can only happen when one or when one was in court. For the termination of service of members of regular force is such that one may resign in terms of section 59(1)(a, or one may the contract may end in terms of section 59(1)(b, or if he or she has reached a prescribed age of retirement in terms of section 59(1)(c, or if he or she is sentenced to a term of imprisonment by a competent civilian court without the option of a fine, or if a sentence involving discharge or dismissal is imposed upon him or her under the code. Good people, there is no sentence imposed upon me that is involving discharge or dismissal, as obligated in terms of section 59(1)(d). This section 59(1)(d) is the one section that enables any other person to be discharged from the South African National Defence Force. It is the only lawful enabling provision to allow any member of the Defence Force to be discharged. Midshipmen of 2023, do not allow your subordinates or any other person in your sphere of influence or command or knowledge to be discharged without the applicable terms of section 59(1)(d), as Lieutenant Commander Mangolele commands you to do. Do not, for it is your duty as an officer to ensure that the law of the land is upheld and not derogated from. It is true that if a Surgeon General or any person authorized thereto by him or her issues a certificate to the effect that due to medical or psychological reasons such member is permanently unfit to serve in the Defence Force, or alternatively in terms of section 59(2), where a member, as a result of the abolition of such a post or any reduction of or adjustment of post structure of the department which has not happened, or any of the applicable terms envisaged in there. It is true that every accused person has the right to a fair trial, which includes the right to be informed of the charge with sufficient detail to answer such a charge. I do not have sufficient detail to answer a charge why I must not enter a military unit. I do not have sufficient detail to answer a charge that why must I not escort any other person into a frigate, into a submarine, into any other South African naval vessel which I have served in, to show them what I have done, how I have done it, and educate people accordingly. I have not received such a information in terms of the law. All that has persisted has been a manifestly illegal order that people have followed to this day. Every accused person has a right to a fair trial, which includes the right to have adequate time and facilities to prepare defense, to a public trial before an ordinary court, to have their trial begin and conclude without delay, to be present when being tried. Whenever you say Mangolele must not, please have the audacity and courage to call me in and say, I am this person holding this rank in the Navy, I am calling you, or I am this person holding this rank in the Defence Force, I am calling you to come and show cause in this particular regard. Please let us not deviate from the law. I must choose and to be represented by a legal practitioner and to be informed of this right promptly. I must have a right to a legal practitioner assigned to the accused person by the state and at state expense if substantial injustice would otherwise result, and to be informed of this right promptly. I must be presumed innocent, to remain silent and not to testify during the proceedings. Right now, what has been happening is that one is being presumed guilty until proven innocent. The opposite has happened, while the reality is that we must presume a person innocent until proven guilty. And a person, I did not adduce or challenge any evidence in relation to reasons why I must not enter into a military establishment. Not to be compelled to give self-incriminating evidence, and everyone has a right to be tried in their own language and not to be convicted for their act or omission that was not an offense under either national or international law, at the time it was committed, not to be tried for an offense in respect of an act or omission for which that person has performed. For if ye shall diligently keep all these commandments which I command you, to do them, to love the Lord your God, and to walk in all his ways, and to cleave unto him, those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace shall be with you. For we can do nothing against the truth, but for the truth. For we are glad when we are weak, and ye are strong. And this also we wish, even your perfection. Therefore I write these things being absent, lest being present I should use sharpness according to the power which the Lord hath given me to edification and not to destruction. Finally, brethren, farewell. Be perfect. Be of good comfort. Be of one mind. Live in peace, and the God of love and peace shall be with you. God help us all. Papa Oting. Let us live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home. Papa Oting. It is indeed true that I thank you for your audience, and I expect you to perform all these constitutional obligations diligently and without delay. And I expect you to call me on 0848359161, such that the Constitution may be the supreme law, and law or conduct that is inconsistent with it may be invalid, and the obligations imposed by the Constitution may be fulfilled. God has indeed blessed Africa. Papa Ote.